as to be expected after a long time of sunny weather, there came a week filled with rain. Day and night he heard the drumming of water drops against the windows. Most people stayed inside as long as they could. Tiana volunteered to buy groceries to everyone's relief, but came back slurring like a sailor towards every single person around her, as if brief water exposure would leave her wet under the skin. Later Dew figured out that the only reason for her doing so was that she could reason herself out of dishwashing duty in the morning and midday. Dew would always take the dinner duty alone. One midday it happened that Josephine stayed with him as Tiana and everyone else left. It was dark outside due to the thick rain clouds, and a faint thunder could be heard if listened closely. Somehow Dew loved it. He even wished himself to be outside, run through the warm summer rain, and smell the floor around him being revived after a period of thirst. He swore to do so later. At first they stood there, and he cleaned the plates with the water coming down from the barrel above. She dried them off, and no one spoke. Then she began talking about the most recent developments in her life. The tomatoes had begun growing, which she was really excited about. What a simple thing to bring enjoyment. And her husband had already settled in, earlier than expected, and now they were sharing a room for two. Maybe Avery and him could get one as well, but it wasn't necessarily needed. Their own apartment had enough space for people who didn't intend to stay forever. Now Josephine would see him every day, even if it was only during the night and early morning. That was plenty, Dew fully agreed. Next, Josephine talked about her troubles. Radical mood swings. She claimed she felt like an entirely different person from time to time. Then there were her worries. Would she make a good parent? Was it safe in Bogota? Could she and her husband fund a stable life for the kid? And then the biggest of them all, would the two of them make it through pregnancy alive and well? To those questions he couldn't respond to. The cat wagged its tail and rolled up by the fire, and suddenly she started talking about the cat. No, Dew didn't know Claus used to be a street cat, but he could guess. And he also wasn't aware that it was Sean who had brought him with him one day, because his eldest son felt so incredibly sorry for everyone who didn't have a home like he used to. After listing all she knew of the cat's backstory and ending with Sean's son, she stopped for a moment. He didn't have anything against the woman, but her constant urge to talk could really get on his nerves sometimes. She then began to rock forth and back repeatedly and wouldn't stop. It was a small motion, but it was right in Dew's corner of sight. Now he had to fight with himself whether to tell her to stop or ignore it until they were done. Just 20 seconds later he noticed that it might as well end with him throwing a plate straight across the room, so he turned his head towards her. Josephine had her eyes strangely fixed on the fork she was holding, and her lips pressed to a thin line. She looked over towards Dew as if she was about to talk, then looked back. He made a face before she could notice. Suddenly she froze, turned towards Dew once again, and spouted like a waterfall. "Did you know Sean doesn't actually have children of his own? They are adopted from an orphanage 2 hours away in the northwest, so barely anyone knows. People aren't supposed to ask, 'Why didn't you have children of your own?' and all that." Dew blinked twice. "Eh? Yeah, crazy, isn't it? That's not even the most insane part, because Teresa could actually have children, but Sean and her are actually just friends who married to make Sean's parents happy because they really wanted grandchildren. They made a deal when they were around 16 years old that they would marry as best friends because, did you know, Sean actually doesn't love women?" Dew blinked thrice. "Oh well, that's rough for him. So I talked to him once or twice, and he told me it's something very, very secret. But I think you are allowed to know because, yeah, Sean had a crush on Frederick when they were small. Well, Sean was small, but Frederick stayed pretty much the same height." She giggled like a mad squirrel. So that's why she acted so strangely. But he had one question left on his mind. "Why on earth are you telling me this?" She stared at the ceiling and took another plate to dry. "I was just thinking that maybe it was good for you to know that there are some people like you around here, and they live pretty normal lives and don't fear to be executed." "Now what do you mean by that?" There was obvious heat in his face. "It was pretty obvious that you don't fit the norm when it comes to relationships, so I thought it might be nice for you to know that someone supports you." She giggled again. "Supports me? Thank you," Dew stammered. "But it's not how you think it is." It was pretty much how she guessed it to be, and even though Avery turned out to have been born a woman, it still felt as if she was the opposite. Dew couldn't tell his mind wouldn't change. He had seen almost the entirety of the other one's body, and Avery said herself she would try to fit the norm. Try. That was the word. It was as if she was unfit for the role she had to play. "Whatever you say. Anyway, I fear I might get sick with all of that weather," Josephine continued, almost chuckling through her words again. And she kept chatting until they were done. Then Josephine quickly vanished, and Dew opened the door to take the path towards the small exit leading towards the garden with the miniature cathedral. The muggy air came inside. To his surprise, it wasn't raining any longer. The cat peeked outside as if it planned on taking a stroll, but then decided to go back to the spot by the warm fire. Dew rolled his eyes and went out. Luckily, he had changed his clothes back from the neat ones of a servant to his casual wear, and as he stepped on the wet grass, it immediately proved useful, as the legs of his pants got wet and dirty. He knew where he wanted to go within the garden, the place behind the small cathedral. He quickly reached the building and noticed that the blue star flowers were still blooming. Dew took a turn which led around and behind the building, worshipping a goddess who didn't act. There were trees which were tall and thin like a needle wall, with a gap where the path broke through. After 30 meters through pure grass, he was met with a brick railing reaching up to his lower ribs. As he looked over them, he could see downhill, and there, after a stripe of forest, there was the meadow and then the city with the red rooftops. He wondered if he could be seen from below there, but guessed not. A veil of cloud still terrorized the people, and it might start up at the castle again at any given moment. He sat down on a wall. It was 2 meters thick, so he was sure not to accidentally slip off and fall to his death. There Dew sat for a while, losing track of time and ignoring how dirty his pants had actually gotten. The thunder was gone, the thick cloud stayed neutral, and it was the perfect temperature for him. A wind began to blow right in his face, and he was grateful for having hair still short enough not to get stuck in his eyes or nose. And nobody would bother him. What idiot apart from him would go out here, especially during this kind of weather? It was just in time he noticed the silhouette sneaking up on him. Not this time, he thought, and flew around in an instant. A pair of shocked pink eyes stared at him in terror as his arm slung around her waist with his whole body weight coming against her. They landed in the grass. Dew let go but stayed on top while looking down at her. "Good evening," he greeted as unfazed as possible, which didn't exactly work through his pant. Avery pushed herself up a little so she was standing on her elbows. "I guess this one goes to you." "Good evening, Fishy," she admitted, looking downwards but smiling. "Or not," she then added, brought him out of balance, switched positions with him, and held him down by one arm. After recovering from the follow-up surprise, Dew noticed something to be different. "Since when do you have a necklace?" he asked, and tried to reach for the string around her neck, leading into the top with his free hand. She stopped his hand mid-air. "It's a little surprise, but try to beat me first," Avery challenged smugly. She wasn't as easy to throw off balance as he was. She had the advantage that she was prepared, and perhaps knowing how to fight with and without a weapon was quite useful as well. Still, he somehow managed to break free, but didn't get the upper hand immediately after. He stood up after rolling away from her to get to a safe distance. "Of course, let the cook fight against a trained soldier. How fair," he half-jokingly complained. "I know you can possibly bring me down. Just try it," she encouraged, and opened her arms, while standing up as if she was inviting him. Sadly, he was too slow with his second attempt. He tried to throw her backwards by blocking her legs from stabilizing herself, but ended up being grabbed by the shoulders and rather roughly ended up on the ground again. There they wrestled for a couple of minutes, but it became clear who was capable of winning. Her grip was too unmoving and his attempts too weak. In the end he gave up, laid flat on the ground, and put his arms above his head. He was covered in mud and torn off blades of grass, and so was Avery. She sat on his legs and pulled him back into a sitting position by his shirt. "Not bad," she praised, and he exclaimed, "Not bad, I lost miserably." "It's as you said, it's not a fair fight. You could almost beat me if you had a year of training, though. Even less would be enough for someone like you. You pick up skills you want to learn extremely well." Then she moved closer and stabilized Du's upper body by putting her legs around his back. His breathing wanted to stop. His mind forced him to at least to try to act natural. His hands close to his chest and eyes wanting to avert the other one's body was the closest he got to it, though. "Close your eyes," Avery demanded. So he did as he was told. A water drop landed on his head. It was definitely beginning to rain again now. One of his hands was taken by Avery's. A sigh of relief coming from Avery had him open his eyes back up. He looked at his hand, his finger to be precise. A shimmering object greeted his gaze. Du turned his hand around a few times. "How?" he asked in amazement. She crossed her fingers with his. "She wore a ring as well." "A little bit of working in my free time. Also, I'm so relieved the size is right," Avery explained. "I know you're not all that into the concept of marriage and all that, and neither am I, but I thought it might be appropriate to—" He put his arms around her torso and buried his face in her shirt. "Thank you," he spoke with his voice muffled. He wanted to know what he did to deserve this, to deserve her. It couldn't have been his personality or any specific acts apart from wanting the other. And not even that did he do specifically well. It had been her who needed a reason to live. It was her who needed somewhat of a protection in the army, now that she was basically a target with a red X marked on the uniform. That must be it, Du thought to himself. Still his heart didn't stop beating hastily in his chest, and the joy from the presence of a singular object didn't cease. It began to rain. Du didn't let go, though. In contrast, he held her even closer. He felt her body slightly moving away from him. "Do you want to go?" he asked, to which she replied, "It's raining, so I thought you would." Not even a second later she landed with her back on the ground. Her hands were pinned by Du this time. "No," he replied, and felt how she playfully hinted at trying to free herself, but never actually did. He felt convinced he could keep the other one down for a little longer this time. The rain picked up, ran over his cheeks, and dropped down from his chin and nose. He loved it, being like this for a moment for no one to see. Disheveled, dirty, and messed up by nature, but heavy. Avery's legs wrapped tightly around his waist, which pulled him further down towards her. What did she think? That wouldn't let him let go of her wrist. Just as he grasped the thought, Du felt her lips and then teeth against his neck. At first it was rather soft, but got more fierce to a point where it almost hurt. But only almost. That's why he let her. And his hands loosened up. She freed herself and regained the upper hand. And she still didn't let go of his neck entirely and moved places, while her hands were keeping his head laying sideways on the grass. Du very consciously felt his chest rising and sinking through the deep breath he sucked in through his slightly open mouth, and how it carried the weight of the person on top of him. Then the hands around his head had him look up, and Avery ran straight for his lips. Once again her warmth filled him with the heat as well, but this time it felt as if it traveled further and stayed in his chest. If he could choose, he would keep the warmth locked in there. It was as if pure energy flowed through him, filling his muscles and twisting his brain. His hands reached for the horns and held them, and the black wet hair stuck to his fingers. Then he went further down to touch the point where her wings grew out of her back. It felt exactly the same as the horns, until the area where it was just scaled skin. She was the one who separated the kiss and pushed a streak of hair out of his face with his thumb. "I never knew you could have a warm body temperature," she noted. Then Avery moved a little so she could rest her head on his chest, with her ear placed on his left side. She once again crossed her fingers with Du's hand. His heart was beating hard inside of his ribcage, and Du knew she could hear it. Her weight was little compared to her size. He felt it all on top of him, and suddenly he was fully aware of himself. His breath, his heat, his hands holding on to her, his heartbeat, his weakness, his excitement, and he hated what his simple joy had turned into. He wanted to leave before she would notice if she hadn't already formed a suspicion. He felt numb. Every part of him except his mind was against moving. I should go," he stammered out, but didn't move a muscle. She hummed. "You can speak your mind. I told you it's okay." So she did know. Du hated being read like an open book. He didn't hate her for it. Avery had struggled much to get used to the Merling's gestures and mimic language. He hated himself. "I told you it's okay," her words echoed in his hollow mind. He had to search for the memory, the moment from not too long ago when she had tried to explain it to him. It had started with the words, "I broke things off. He will no longer call me." and when he managed to comprehend her achievement he had struggled with what to do, say or feel. There was nothing he could give except his affection. For once it was as if he truly did the right thing. The way she fell into his arms once he had opened his had been like a broken-legged man receiving a crutch. No tears had been shedded, no additional words had been spoken. It was enough to silently celebrate the freedom from her slavery. Then, after minutes of silence, she had begun speaking. "Now no one will know," she had said. "No one can prove it and haunt me. But you shouldn't act like it never happened. I can't know how it feels, but take things slowly," Dew had replied, every word flowing like venomous spiders out of his mouth. Avery had smiled, her eyes hadn't. For the first time Dew had noticed it this harshly. "I will do what I can. And you will tell me what you want. It's my choice how I react to your wants. Don't hesitate. I know you will be discreet." At present, Avery put the hand she held to her lips. Dew stared into the grey sky and saw the tips of the trees that blocked his view towards the castle. He didn't want to decide for himself but had to, so he asked himself, why not, to which he couldn't answer in a way that could satisfy him. "Do you want to?" he heard her question. Avery moved her hand slightly lower, so she was holding him by the wrist. He sighed silently, his mind spinning as if it was about to leave his body. She said it was okay. She wouldn't lie about this, wouldn't she? "Take the lead," he replied, and let himself slip into her control. Dew arrived a little later than he should have at his workplace. Frederick was already there, and threw him an admonishing glance. Dew thought the man could be a little more grateful. If it wasn't for Avery's generosity of having him appear in their room, it could have gotten a whole lot later. When he had reappeared there, he was surprised to find Avery had not gone with him. Having to ignore it, he had cleaned his body from dirt, water and grass, changed his clothes, brushed his hair, and immediately went down as if nothing had happened. The cat had moved spots and was now sitting on a shelf next to the spiral staircase. Its eyes followed him as he went to get some dryware from the storage room upstairs. What was wrong with that cat? Even though Dew felt a little tired and overwhelmed, he managed to stay focused even after the two women arrived. What happened to Sean was unclear, but it seemed as if he wouldn't arrive this night. As they were complete, Frederick explained that the princess had fallen sick, and she would prefer a warm meal to the newcomers, while Dew had already sat down by the fireplace and peeled potatoes. The other people they served, except the two royals, didn't have any specific wishes like most of the time. He assumed that the wise men were just too busy actually running the kingdom, while the king did whatever his damned head wanted to, or perhaps they didn't exist at all because he never saw them. With dedication he ignored Tiana's presence. She had lost her last bit of grip on Dew, now she should feel it. Her hands could no longer hold his flesh without consequence like before. Secretly he wore a bitter smile. Later, when everything was prepared and ready to be served, he was about to change rooms to get into the other set of clothes. Luckily, his hair had just dried in time, and Frederick's threat during the time of work of cutting all of his hair off didn't become reality. But Dew didn't get far. Tiana grabbed him by the sleeve, and before he could tell her to let go, another hand was already on his neck, making him unable to speak clearly. "I knew it," she huffed as she forced him to tilt his head to the side. All eyes were on him, and on the bruises. Somehow he hadn't thought of covering that up immediately. "Can you leave your hands off that poor young man for once?" he heard Josephine behind him. She didn't pay her any attention. Her brown eyes were fixed on his neck, and her grip was hurting him. "You damn traitor, who do you think I am?" she then bursted out, letting go of his neck, but shortly after he felt a burning sensation on his cheek. Tiana had actually hit him. How dare she? How dare she actually lift a hand against him? Then her hand went to grab his collar. "Let go," he squeezed through his teeth. She didn't, but went on a rant instead. "Do I mean nothing to you? I took part of your work, treated you like a damn prince the whole time you were here, and even offered you my belongings. Yesterday I asked you to court me. We kissed. Do you think I let you do this to me? Do you think you're better than me? Because you aren't. You aren't better than me." "Let go," he commanded, his heartbeat rising as the scene she mentioned resurfaced. Her room, a locked door, her hands on his body as if he was a piece of flesh to be weighed and sold. "And let you get away with that outrageous behavior of yours? I sacrificed so much for you. I raised you, you unholy faggot. I swear to. He tore her hand off his collar and shook his arm free. Tiana stared at him with hatred, and his fists clenched. Oh, how sorry I am, he exclaimed theatrically, that all of your countless gifts of yours towards me were for nothing, all of your endless complaining, your prejudices, and the whining of what you deserved. Who do I think I am to give you false hope by doing nothing but my job during the past 4 years? My stars, do you even hear yourself talk? Probably not, because why else would you be pitying yourself as if it wasn't you who undermined the throne countless lovers built for you? Her follow-up reaction he really wasn't prepared for. She teared up, but the hatred spread across her face like a wildfire as she screamed, "Do you really prefer a whore over me?" It felt like an instinct. He just couldn't react differently. It had happened automatically. And the screaming stopped, and Tiana collapsed to the dirty stone ground. The silence filled the room like a wave covering a drowning person. Everyone was staring at him. He was breathing heavily with his head tilted downwards and his fingernails stabbing into his clenched fist. She was shaking. Blood dripped from her nose. He left the scene without a word, changed into the servant uniform and went back down. Tiana was gone, and it felt good. He could have gone harder, he knew that. Maybe a broken jaw, that would have kept her from talking for a long time, but the nose would disfigure her face forever. The following night he slept well. Maybe his dreams were a little weird, something about a miniature version of himself sitting in a dishwashing sink, but all in all he was satisfied. Avery was curled up sleeping since he got back, her face resting peacefully. When he reached out for her hand, she softly held it, and Tiana would probably never touch him ever again.